let's talk about it.
Hello and welcome back to Thicc Radio, the award-winning podcast where we talk about gaining, fetishism, and everything plus size. I'm James.
And I'm Tim, so let's get into it.
How you doing, babe?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Yeah, I'm fine.
You'll have to excuse the dog in the background. My neighbors leave their dog outside constantly.
It's all right. What's the dog's name? Do we know?
I think it's Bowser.
Bowser. Well, I think if Matt is our honorary third co-host, then Bowser can be the fourth, because I'm almost certain in all the years we've edited this podcast, I'm certain at times I've just heard that dog going and I've just gone, you know what? It's diegetic. She's there, present in the episode.
Yeah, but it's maddening when it's right outside your window.
No, that's understandable, but listen, at the very least, doesn't sound too loud to me. Listeners, if you find Bowser entertaining or wildly detracting from our episodes of the podcast, do let us know at thiccradio@gmail.com. So, obviously, we're here for another review. Listen, top of the episode, this is at least different.
Yes, this was not visual. This was a book.
A book, yes. We don't often get the chance to do books because, plot twist, most people don't write about gaining and fetishism. But it's nice, I suppose, when people do. It's different, it's nice, it's different, it's unusual, as classic Australian TV characters might say. And it is an unusual read, I must say. So, listen, let's jump straight into it, shall we? Today, we're reviewing King Gluttony, the story of a 750-pound man, written by Nicholas Morello, better known to the community as King Gluttony. Before we jump into the review itself, are you familiar with the name, with the character?
Yes. Yeah. I'm very, I think everyone's kind of familiar with who King Gluttony is.
Yeah.
He was pretty popular on, I can't remember if he was selling clips under his own name or if he was doing it under Hansy's brand.
I think
back in the day.
Both at one stage, I feel like.
Potentially.
But either way, he wrote a book, ladies and gentlemen, and that's what we're reviewing today. So, what was this book actually about?
Well, it was supposed to be, it was presented as, or he wrote it as, the explanation for how he got into eating and stuffing himself online, not live, but like videos that he would record for specific people and what's the word I'm looking for? Commission. He did by commission. And this, I get, the way that it reads is that it's his explanation for how he got into that world.
Yeah, he definitely takes you on a journey from early childhood through to where he's at now. And I say where he's at now, I think the book originally came out sometime in the mid to late 10s. So, in the last, maybe a bit over a decade ago now, maybe?
Really? It's been that long?
I think so. Well, near enough. I think so. Anyways, around about that timeline. It certainly wasn't released in the last couple of years. It's slightly longer than that. So I think in the book he acknowledges that he was born in 85. So I think he's around about your age, maybe a little.
Oh yeah, that's right. That would make him 38 currently.
Yeah. And so I think he says early 30s at the time. So, yeah. Sometime in the last decade this book has come out. And I don't know how much has changed. King Gluttony, if you're out there listening and would like to come on to give us an update, please feel free. But yeah, the book does go from, the sort of beginning for him to where he's at the time of publishing. And I will say it does detail some interesting stuff. It gives a lot of his internal dialogue around, different experiences, both positive and negative. It includes things like talking about bullying and parental neglect and abuse, heart failure, and despair tied with his weight gain. do you feel like, and stripping away this particular narrative to start with, just those topics in particular, do you feel like we often talk about these things or have the chance to look at those concepts in the community?
Yeah, but I don't think it happens often enough. And you and I have talked on previous episodes, or maybe it was just between the two of us, about the privilege of the fact that we both grew up skinny. You know, we had it easier because we weren't fat in childhood or teenagehood, and a lot of gainers who enter into the community, I think, take that for granted.
Yeah, in our episode, Fat to Fatter, this is exactly the conversation point. It is a different experience when you have grown up fat and need to unpack what is oftentimes a lot of abuse that comes from systemic fat phobia. So this aligns with Nick's story. Growing up, he always was on the larger side, always ate a lot of food. And, it is heartbreaking to read that aspect of his story because when he describes the kind of words that people are using and the situations he found himself in, it does tug on the heartstrings. It does make you sort of think, wow, like that's quite powerful for someone to have experienced.
Yeah, and I'm sure people that have read it, that have gone through that would identify.
I'm going to say this here because I feel like obviously we're reviewing the book and we need to talk about these types of things. There are a lot of spelling, syntax, and grammar errors in the
Yeah,
book.
I noticed.
Yeah, and you found this because, unlike most copies of the book, we'll be plain about this. Getting a copy of this book was extremely difficult.
Yeah.
And shout out to Jan, living in the Netherlands, because I found a copy of this on like a Netherlands specific equivalent of Amazon, and there was only one copy left, and he was able to buy it for me, deliver it to his house, ship it to me, just so I could read this book. And so, in order for Tim to read it, I actually read him this book, one story, just sort of annotating it live on camera. And even in
It was kind of the most bizarre story time I had ever had.
this is what the conservatives are really trying to protest at the moment. Me reading this story to literally anyone. Um, but even in my trying to naturally overcome the errors that I'm seeing in the book, I'm tripping over my words, and then you're like, wait, what did you just say? And I'm like, yes, that is what I said. And
I get the feeling that it wasn't proofread by an editor.
no, so from what I can understand, because I don't know what you would call it, like a retail page exists for this book on Amazon, and I am aware that you can self-publish through Amazon. I'm not sure what that process is like, but I don't think there's really an editing team behind it, so
I sincerely doubt it. I think that they probably expect that you've run it through Microsoft Word,
yeah,
and that's probably the most you've done.
yeah. So look, just being very honest about it, there are a number of clerical errors, shall we say, that at times really makes it a bit difficult because you do get the feeling that, maybe the book's just been kind of smashed out as a series of thoughts, as momentary vignettes that have been pulled together. So it doesn't follow like a very. I mean, it's linear in that, it goes in a timeline direction, but it just doesn't. It doesn't read and move you the way that typical literature does if it's maybe got that finer sense of finesse attached to it. So
Yeah.
that's just an honest piece of feedback there.
The prose is rather lacking.
Yeah, I would say. Though when
Is that a more PC way to say it?
maybe, but ultimately this is the reality, and so I don't know where I would go with this, but just it makes me conscious anytime we put out any kind of writing, because obviously we draft the briefs for all these episodes, we draft the scripts for education. Anytime we do an email or a case study, we always read over the copy so firmly because the moment it gets sent out, the moment it's finalized, it's like, that's it. Whoever professionally reads this is going to decide that as well as this is written, that is the level of professionalism we have to offer. So, I mean, look, it's just a piece of feedback. King Gluttony, if you're listening, but also for anyone else. If you're writing something, spell check, you know? It's good stuff. Grammarly is a free thing that you can download and attach to your Chrome, for example. It's fabulous, very, very helpful. Though I will say, when we were reading through it, because I had some questions for you, he does mention some aortic bits throughout, and
Oh yeah, the self-reported medical information was accurate. Like what he was describing would have been, it was true as far as what he was describing.
So to that point, right, obviously we mentioned heart failure is part of his story. He mentions he went into this experience at the age of 14, which is very, very intense. What was it called?
Stenosis, aortic stenosis.
Aortic stenosis. What the fuck is aortic stenosis?
It happens when one of your heart valves begins to narrow. Like stenosis means to narrow. A lot of people deal with this in their spine when like their spine, like the discs in their spine begin to compress. But this is when one of the heart valves starts to narrow, and it makes it harder for the blood to get pushed through the narrow valve, and it causes the potential fear of like backflow, which can begin to clot, and clots can lead to a pulmonary embolism, an aortic embolism, or an aneurysm even. And all of those are just terms for like a blood vessel goes pop and you bleed out. So
I mean, obviously, it was a very powerful thing to read, and I know that obviously we talk about health as a specific narrative with the podcast, but I don't think we've really had an episode focusing so specifically on like blood and like maybe heart disease and situations like that. I suppose it's a quick moment here. Is there anything you'd want to share with the listeners just regarding heart health or just maybe some medical literacy around this situation?
it's going to be kind of tricky because it depends on how proactive your doctor is and how proactive you want to be. General heart health is always, I know that we're trying to gain weight and not lose weight in this community, but going for walks will certainly help a little bit. Like you're not going to get your heart up to the pumping rate where it's actually going to make a difference because that's where they want like the whole thing about weight loss is they want your heart up to a certain rate so you're burning calories. But that will still help with your mobility. You can always, like, if you're concerned about your bad cholesterol or your triglycerides, you can take fish oil. Though I warn you, if you have difficulty swallowing large pills, they are huge. So take that into consideration. And then just if you feel that something is out of order, if you feel kind of weird or you feel like your heart's doing something kind of funky, talk to your doctor about it. You may need an echocardiogram. And if they brush you off and say, well, you're too young for this, just be insistent. Just be insistent. Because that's the only way you're going to get heard.
Yeah. And, to that point, he does say in the book that it was a difficult situation for him to deal with because, he'd been struggling with his weight, with his size, he discovered a love for baseball, and then because of this situation, he was no longer able to play. And, maybe that's something more physically active than most gainers envision, but it is also worth considering. And we do dance around this a little bit when we talk about health, but the reality is if we find ourselves in a medical position where we are no longer able to gain the weight, that really scuppers the fun that we can have with this gaining experience. So maintaining health at the very least a little bit is probably not a bad shout,
Well, and the cardiac stuff is especially important because let's say I have high blood pressure, right? So I have to take medications on top of mild exercise in order to keep it down. And it's not just dangerous because of heart attacks and strokes. It's dangerous because it taxes the kidneys. So that's something that I have to be aware of the rest of my life is that I have a blood pressure problem and it could damage my kidneys.
Yeah. Obviously, we mentioned before, and we've talked a lot through the trauma here. Something else I want to ask you is, do we need to have a conversation at some stage about trauma informing gains? And I say this because I feel like, not to say people who, okay, I have found when I've talked to civilians about gaining, generally speaking, when there is some form of pushback, The kind of pushback I get is, oh, it sounds like maybe you've got some trauma and that's why you're eating food, either to cope or to like long form kill yourself.
Hmm.
Which obviously I'm like, well, no, that's not the case.
Yeah.
But I mean, from your experience in this community, do you feel like there's an argument for that?
I suppose there is as much as it is in any other community that like trauma informs a BDSM fetish or a leather fetish or a gun fetish, whatever your fetish may be. Um, so yeah, I'm sure there could be a fair amount of that, but I wouldn't guess that it's an overwhelming statistic.
Me either. And, it does make me come back because I do feel like there is this hint in the book. I mean, I say a hint, he does sort of talk about how he was struggling, and then people in this community took advantage of him and convinced him to gain weight. This is the narrative he goes with, right?
Yeah.
And there is the
Which I really wish that he was completely wrong about that, but we both know that there are more unscrupulous people
well,
within.
he does say look, he does say in the book he doesn't identify as a gainer, and he doesn't experience any arousal from gaining or fetishism. Do you feel like there are a lot of people who are like that in the community?
I don't know how, well, yeah, they have to be out there somewhere. I don't know how many or what in what number, but there are some guys that I knew some guys who locally went on to Grommr and they weren't really gainers either. They were just big boys, but they liked the attention that they got. It's like one more place that they could get attention because they were already on Chaseable and they came over to Grommr. But inevitably, the reason that they end up leaving Grommr is because they told me that they had been pressured into continuing to gain weight, even though both of them were happy at the size that they were at.
Yeah. I don't know. It's one of those things that again comes down to the fact we just don't have data. We don't have
Yeah, we really don't.
so, you know.
And the conversation hasn't been had until now.
Yeah. Which is another thing, right? And I'll say this because obviously we want to remind people where we're coming from when we have these discussions. Let's also be frank in the fact that we like no one else is having no one else is
Yeah, no
having.
one, I mean, I don't see people talking about this stuff. So.
No. So listen, if you don't like what we're saying in this episode, as much as we want to make sure that everyone is aware, we're not trying to step on anyone's toes or hurting anyone's feelings here. If you feel a certain type of way about this, also feel inclined to like review content of gainers yourself as well, because we just
Yeah, we
need
can send you a whole list.
girly. We need more of it. We need more of it. Like there is a reason why we say everything in its orbit because no one else is doing the work, and so Tim and I, we are just. It's like that scene in Wall-E where they're on like the planet after it's dead, and he has built in hundreds of years skyscrapers made of like rubbish blocks, and he is just one little robot working one after the other, just compact, make into a cube, build a tower, and then just keep on. That is us working through all the gainer related things. Um, I did mention that this book was difficult to locate. Why do you think that is?
Well, I'm pretty sure that if it was published the way I think it was published, Amazon's not just going to print like 1,000 copies or something like that. It's going to be you get a copy when you order the book. They'll print it and ship it out. So if it's not still on Amazon, correct?
Like the listing is there, but it won't allow you to purchase any copies. It's out of stock, essentially.
Oh, okay. Well, then maybe they did print only several hundred copies, and once they were out, they were out. I don't know. I don't know how Amazon goes about its publishing business.
No, and if anyone does know, again, feel free to write into us and give us some insight into that. But yeah, look, it was difficult to get a hold of, and I feel like the only reason I went through so much effort to try and find it is because honestly, there's not a lot of gainer books written.
Yeah, there
Period.
really isn't.
So if anyone else has any, feel free to let us know. Send us your recommendations. Um, but being that, we can suspect because of the Amazon inclusion that it might have been self-published, do you feel like more gainers should self-publish? Because I know that there are people who post fiction, right? And
Yes.
sell their fiction on Amazon. But should
Yeah.
people be sharing their testimony, so to say, writing their stories and selling them on Amazon that way?
We have a friend that that wrote, I believe, two books now, where they are collections of interviews with gainers. And I apologize that I can't remember the name of the book, but so there is something like that that is going on, and I would like to see more of it.
I agree. I think we are in a bit, and I know we've talked about this on previous seasons of the podcast, but it does feel like we are in a renaissance where there are more people producing artwork. There are more people writing stories and producing their own work and doing different things. Like there's Cards of Gluttony being produced by Oakfells. Like that's a card game, an online Java game running that's fabulous. I know that there's like web forums where people have done like a gainer version of D&D. Like there are things happening, and it would just be nice if there were more things. So if you're inspired to create a thing, go and create a thing. So, wrapping this up, how would you honestly describe the overall vibe of the book?
All criticisms aside, I do feel sympathetic to his story for the bullying that he experienced growing up. For, because even though I wasn't bullied for being fat, I was bullied for being gay. So I know what that's like. Um, and if he was in fact coerced and manipulated into becoming this big fat porn star and gained even more weight and potentially put himself into a higher risk for other things just for the enjoyment of his public, I that one's hard to just have an emotion about that. It's like I'm happy for people who got what they wanted, and if he felt fulfilled at the time, that's also great. But if he's now regretting it, that's not good for him. So
Mm. No, I agree. It's a hard conversation because what we have to review in this are the realities of the book we've read and of the context in which it takes place. So therefore we talk about all of those things. But in terms of whether or not it aligns with his story, that's not for us to critique. And ultimately, it is heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking to know that realistically, and probably something I'll point out here, much like with the AIDS epidemic, a lot of young people today treat it like it's a non-issue, even though it happened in the 80s and 90s, babe. Like, I was alive, you were
well,
alive,
and it is still ongoing. I
it is
mean,
still
there
on.
is no cure.
There are people who are alive today who operated during those times, who knew people that just died. Horrible, horrible deaths. So maybe something that's worth realizing here is that the bullying received by a member of this community, whether or not he identifies as a gainer, um, is still palpable and felt by that person, reflected in his actions today. And I think that's maybe something we should all be aware of when it comes to bullying, when it comes to the things that inform our life decisions. They have roots that follow us and run deeper maybe than we realize a lot of the time. So maybe we just need to give a little bit more maybe we just need to give a little bit more reality to that. What do you feel like his motivations were in writing the book?
I guess to tell his story and hoping that it would resonate with someone else. And I'm sure that it has with at least a few people.
Yeah. I would say that, you know. Um I would ask if you feel like the book is in line with the community or against it. I feel like it's very clear that it's against, but
It does feel that way. I wanted it to come out more. I wanted it to be more neutral, but no, it kind of does. It's trying to paint the whole community in a particular light.
yeah. And do you feel like there's anything in particular that the book is missing that it needs?
I mean, I guess maybe more insight to what he was thinking and feeling at the time of the height of his success, per se.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't, I don't remember there being a lot of description about that, just sort of like this was happening. And like you said, I think at one point he said, yes, I enjoyed it, but it was sort of like that was the only thing he said about it.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of his understanding or interpretation of things. And in a way I kind of feel like that's what would have really helped this. Because even if he's got critiques of gaining, it's a little bit like what we were really zeroing in on before. There's claims of grooming, there's claims of all these things, but well, let's be clear, he doesn't specifically say grooming, I think.
No, he doesn't.
He says like he was led or convinced into it.
Convinced, coerced,
That was the language.
talked into. Yeah.
But we can only cast aspersions on what he meant there based on the context we have. You know, if there was a little bit more of that internal monologue, maybe that would make more sense. Maybe if he explained, like, someone said this to me, I thought this is what he meant, I went along with this, you know. So yeah, I would say that's maybe missing from it. And if I can be honest, out of a rating out of 10, I gave it a 0.
I think ultimately I did too. Not and that should not denote, even though I've been kind of unkind with the rating system with these things, I think I ultimately ended up giving it a 0 because I kind of just feel very neutral about it. I don't really have strong opinions either way about it.
Yeah, I think ultimately what our review scores are based on is how it makes us feel in relation to the narrative of gaining. Because even if, and I want to be clear about this, if someone were to write a piece that was critical of gaining, but you read the piece and it just scalps the community in terms of how we conduct ourselves and how we make people feel, even if it was a damning indictment of who we are, I would at least give that a 7. Because I'd be thinking, you know what? This person came out and said the truth of it, and I feel
Yeah, it depends on what truths are being revealed, and I don't really feel that this story revealed too many truths that I wasn't already aware of.
No, there's no real new learning here, and it's just a kind of very simple life story. I mean, I think ultimately, if I wanted anyone listening to have a real takeaway from this conversation, because I had a hard enough time finding the book, I doubt most listeners are going to be able to find this book, right? Like, it's very difficult to be able to read what was written and get a sense of what King Gluttony is trying to say here. But if there is one takeaway I want people to have from this, it's that words are powerful and they stick around. Whether or not King Gluttony changes his mind on this stance and comes around and says, officially, I am a full-time gainer and I'm going to gain till I die, and all this, it won't change the fact that this book has been written, it exists, it's in the world. Those words are there to be read and consumed and interpreted. And I want people to be aware that what we do, what we create, carries weight, literally and figuratively. It carries weight and power. And that's just something I think we could all stand to be aware of. But, well, that's a wrap for now here on Thicc Radio. Please remember to like and subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and leave us a good review. Now, listen, if you liked this episode, the podcast, our guests, or just us in general, please share it with your friends and encourage them to tune in. You can find me on Instagram and BlueSky at stannnum.
And you can find me on Instagram at ThiccMouse and Grommr at Orpheus. You can also look us up on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Thicc Radio, or on our website at podpage.com/Thicc Radio. If you want to become a financial supporter of the show, you can donate to our PayPal, and you can always write to us at thethiccradio@gmail.com. So until next time, bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Let's talk about it.
Thicc Radio is a Spotify podcast.
Artwork, media design, editing, and production by James Heinzen.
With original theme music by CYMK.